Hi, I'm Lise Leblanc, therapist, author, and life coach. And in this video, I'm going to talk about one of the most common things men struggle with after a narcissistic or borderline relationship, and that is boundaries. Because a lot of men know they should have had stronger boundaries. They know that there were moments when they should have said no, should have walked away, should have stopped explaining and apologizing. They should have stopped giving her second chances, but they didn't. And the question is, why? Why does a good man stay quiet when he knows something isn't right? Why does he keep giving in when he knows it's costing him his self respect? And that's what we're going to talk about today. The 7 reasons men don't hold boundaries with narcissistic or borderline partners. And stay till the end because the last reason is the one most men don't even realize is running the show. So, before we jump in, I just want to explain that boundaries are not walls. They're not about control and they're not about punishment. Boundaries are how you protect your peace, your values, your time, your energy, and your self respect. So, a boundary isn't, I need you to stop doing this or that. That's just a request. And requests are optional, especially for people who don't respect you. A boundary is deciding what you're going to do if the behavior continues and then following through even when it's uncomfortable. So, a boundary isn't you need to stop yelling at me. A boundary is if you keep yelling at me, I'm going to leave the conversation. Do you hear the difference? One is about trying to control someone else's behavior. The other is about taking responsibility for yourself. So she doesn't have to like your boundary. She doesn't have to agree with it. She doesn't even have to respect it. That's her choice. Your choice and your responsibility is deciding what you're going to do if someone crosses your lines and then following through consistently. That's it. The other person literally doesn't have to do anything. But here's where things get complicated. When you try to enforce a boundary with someone who has strong narcissistic or borderline traits, you learn very quickly that every boundary comes at a cost. The first reason is you had too much to lose. So, good men struggle to hold on to their boundaries in these types of relationship because by the time the boundaries really matter, they're already deeply attached. Now, think about how these relationships usually start. The chemistry is incredible. The connection feels effortless. You feel understood, chosen, wanted, validated. You're on a pedestal. And maybe you've never experienced anything like that before. And you start imagining a future together. You picture the life you're going to build with her. And then things start to change. The criticism, the mood swings, the guilt, the control, the disrespect. And now here's the problem. Every boundary starts feeling like a huge risk because every boundary carries the possibility of losing her and losing the fantasy future you imagined. So instead of asking, is this boundary healthy? You start asking, is this boundary worth risking losing the relationship? Reason number 2, you couldn't tolerate her being upset. So if she cries, gets angry, she shuts down, she accuses you of not caring, suddenly your nervous system is just as activated as hers. A lot of good men have been taught that being a good man means making her happy. Happy wife, happy life, right? And maybe there is some truth to that. But you will not have a happy wife if she doesn't respect you, and you certainly won't have a happy life if you don't respect yourself. Now, the problem is that many good men slowly begin measuring their success as a husband by how happy she is. So if she's upset, they'll assume they've failed. If she's angry, they assume they've done something wrong. If she's disappointed or hurt, they assume it's their job to fix it. So now you're not trying to enforce a boundary, you're trying to make the distress stop. So maybe you explain, you apologize, you reassure, you back down. And that's the trap because with a narcissistic woman, you will never make her happy. Reason number 3 is you thought communication was the problem. So every time you set a boundary and it failed, you thought, maybe I didn't explain myself well enough, or maybe she misunderstood, or maybe I just couldn't find the right words. So instead of enforcing your boundary, you kept explaining. But what you didn't realize is that she was not committed to understanding you. She was committed to getting her own way. So maybe you set a boundary and you say something like, I'm not going to have this argument at 11 o'clock at night when I'm exhausted, but I'm ready to talk about it in the morning. And instead of respecting your boundary, she keeps jabbing at you, trying to bait you into having the argument now on her terms. And let's say you hold your ground and you end the conversation. Then the next day, it's the silent treatment, or she's being passive aggressive, or she's blaming and shaming you, saying that you're selfish or you don't care. And you might start thinking, well, maybe I wasn't calm enough, or maybe I didn't say it the right way, or maybe I should have just listened to her. But often communication is not the problem. The problem is that you're expecting someone who is emotionally immature to respond to your boundary in a mature way, the way a psychologically healthy adult would. The fourth reason is that your nervous system learned that boundaries are dangerous. Maybe you're thinking right now, I did set boundaries. And maybe you did. Maybe you said no. You stood your ground. And what happened? You got rage, silent treatment, guilt tripping, blaming, shaming, passive aggressive comments. So your nervous system learns something very quickly. Boundaries are not safe. And once your nervous system learns that, it starts to protect you. So the next time you think about setting a boundary, you feel anxious, you hesitate, you back down. Not because you're consciously deciding to do that, but because your nervous system is trying to protect you from another painful experience. And that's conditioning. It's no different than touching a hot stove. You don't have to remind yourself not to touch it again. Your body remembers. Reason number five is she uses leverage to coerce you. So, this is another reason men struggle to hold their boundaries because over time, she has learned exactly what buttons to push. Think about it. No one can emotionally manipulate you unless they're holding something that you believe you can't afford to lose. So, if I threaten to take something away that you don't care about, I have absolutely no power over you. But if I threaten your children, your reputation, your sense of peace, your identity, now the stakes have changed. And that's where leverage comes from. Once she discovers what matters to you most, that's where she'll push. Not necessarily because all of her moves are carefully calculated, but because she's learned that this is how she can get what she wants with the least amount of effort. Reason number six is you thought loving her was more important than protecting yourself. And this is one of the biggest reasons because you saw her pain, you saw her trauma, the fear of abandonment, her difficult childhood, her insecurities, how stressed and anxious she is. And you kept telling yourself, if I love her enough, she'll eventually feel safe. So every time she crossed a boundary, you made an exception or you became more accommodating. Another discussion, another apology, another compromise, another chance. Not because her behavior was okay, but because you believed she would eventually change. And hope became the reason you stopped protecting yourself. Reason number seven is the biggest one, and that is that fear was running your life. And I think this is the one most men never realize because if you look back at everything we've talked about, there is one thing tying it all together, and that's fear. Fear of conflict, fear of abandonment, fear of being the bad guy, fear of being a bad person, fear of losing the relationship, fear of hurting her, fear of being alone, fear of starting over. And little by little, you stopped asking what's the right thing to do and you started asking what's the least painful thing to do. That is fear talking. And remember, nobody loses their whole self in one afternoon. It happens inch by inch. It's one sarcastic comment, then a guilt trip, then a joke that cuts a little deep. And there's always plausible deniability. And every time you tolerate something that violates your values, the line moves a little further until one day you're tolerating things that you never imagined you would. Not because you're weak, because it happened one small act of self betrayal at a time. And here's the paradox: a woman with strong cluster B traits often spends years trying to remove your boundaries. Don't challenge me, don't say no, don't upset me, don't make me uncomfortable. And she's trying to pull out all your teeth so you can't bite because she thinks once you're completely compliant and under her control, she'll finally feel safe and secure. Because the more she can domesticate you, the less she has to worry about you leaving her, challenging her, or disappointing her. So her anxiety goes down and she gets a temporary sense of security. But this only provides the illusion of security. It doesn't create safety because a man with no boundaries, with no center, with no teeth loses not only respect and attraction, but he also loses value. And here's the interesting thing: a man who is capable of biting, so to speak, rarely has to because people sense it. They respect you because they know there are lines that they can't cross. So if you never develop the ability to confront, to disappoint, to enforce, to walk away, to detach and risk losing things you're attached to, people eventually stop respecting you. Not necessarily because they're evil, but because boundaries organize relationships. And remember, a boundary you don't enforce is just an empty threat. Thank you so much for watching. And if you're still here, you may as well subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss anything.